Welcome to Happier ADHD. My name's Marley Darling. I'm a second generation neurodiversity expert with over 17 years experience, and now I'm raising my own neurodiverse kids. You'll notice that I call the podcast a few different things, but we always explore these same topics that I've been looking at for the last 17 years. Psychology, mindset, neurodiversity, personal development, health and well-being, business, parenting, and more. So, without further ado, let's jump in. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Marley Darling, and the little big thing of this week was keeping consistency even on a messy day. So I finally created a nice and simple routine for myself that focuses on big domino goals, but they're not big. They're little things. So one day a week is to write a blog, and that was yesterday. And yesterday was messy. You know, I homeschool my kids, so at the moment they're with me pretty much all the time, and I'm trying to carve out this time to work. Yesterday, the kids were just grumpy. They just didn't get stuck into an activity like they usually do, and right now we've done some printouts and they're happily doing that, and usually they can find something they're interested in, and they just wouldn't. So it was really difficult. The day was kind of disjointed. I had to take a pet to the vet as well, which was an interruption, and go and collect something in the afternoon, which was another interruption, and there just wasn't as much space in the day or as much flow in the day as I would have liked. But my goal was to do a blog post, get a blog post written on that day. And luckily, because I've been creating a good foundation, because I've been batching all these posts, I have some that are still in drafts. What I was able to do was pull one from the draft, go over it, tweak a few little bits, change the heading, make sure the formatting was correct, and then schedule that for posting. And then that ticked that box of write a blog post on that day. I didn't actually write the blog post, but because I had that foundation there, I was able to follow through and keep this goal and this aim and have this consistency. So that's a little thing, but a big thing. And I felt like I didn't do a ton of work, but I technically got done what I aimed to get done, and I was able to stay on track from doing that and from having those other little foundations and half-done things, and by committing. And I had to sort out the kids first. I had to focus on them. I had to get the vet done, and then I had to regulate the kids by taking them for a walk. And it wasn't until late afternoon, right before dinner time, that I was able to get this actual blog post done. And finally, the kids got stuck into some things. I had one doing musical instruments. I had another doing some construction design builds, and we all sat together, and there was really loud music on. It was chaotic, but it was great. We all got what we needed in the end. So I'm really grateful that that got to happen and that I got that goal done. But on my mind this week, the main topic for today's discussion is attachment styles and how they show up in non-romantic relationships. Now, this is something I hadn't really considered. Obviously, attachment styles were developed originally by observing children, and then they were transposed onto romantic relationships. But I haven't really seen them then translated into friendships. But I noticed recently some attachment trigger behaviors showing up in a few friendships, and that was really insightful for me to notice that, because I'm quite aware of how to manage. I have insecure attachment. I'm quite aware of how to manage that within romantic relationships, but I hadn't really thought about it in friendships. I hadn't really had it flare up to the degree that it was actually something noticeable or something relevant. There are a few different types of attachment styles. It's estimated that 50 to 60% of people have secure attachment, 40 to 50% have insecure attachment styles, which come under three different categories. The first is anxious preoccupied, which is 20% of the population. The second is avoidant dismissive, which is 20 to 25% of the population. And the third is disorganized or fearful avoidant, which is 5 to 15% of the population. Securely attached people are more likely to form and maintain healthy, stable relationships. And disorganized attachment is the least common, but the most challenging, because it's a mix of the other insecure attachment styles. Insecure attachment can show up in relationships in various ways. So for anxious attachment, in relationships, these people tend to fear abandonment and need a lot of reassurance. They might feel too much and not enough at the same time. So in relationships, they might worry that their partner doesn't really love or care for them, or that maybe their partner will discover something about them and then stop loving them. They might need a lot of reassurance, like, do you still love me? They might overanalyze texts and tone, time between replies. They might feel jealous or possessive easily. They might stay in unhealthy relationships due to fear of being alone, or they might try to become very close very quickly. Avoidant attachment often suppresses emotional needs and prioritizes independence to protect themselves from vulnerability. So these attachment styles were noted in an experiment that they did with children, how young children responded when their primary attachment figure, their parent or guardian, left the room. And the insecure attachment kids, they got very upset, they were clingy as the parent left, they didn't want them to leave. Whereas the avoidant attachment children tended to shut down and show very little emotion and decide basically not to care, like to protect themselves. So in relationships, avoidant attachment people might feel suffocated by too much closeness or emotional need. They might struggle to be vulnerable or say I love you. They might pull away when things get too intimate. They might seem aloof or emotionally distant. They might value independence to the point of pushing people away. So this can show up in friendships as well, and that's what I've been noticing and trying to work it out, because there's different nuances there. So in friendships, for the anxious attachment, it might be fear of being left out, fear of being replaced by other friends. They might need a lot of contact and validation. They might take read into distance or slow replies or lack of replies. They might think that means various things. They might catastrophize. They might feel overly responsible for keeping the friendship alive. And they might people please or suppress their own needs to keep friends close. And then for the avoidant people, they might keep things surface level, even with long-term friends. They might disappear or go silent during emotional times. They might feel uncomfortable when others are needy or emotional. They might end friendships abruptly or drift without explanation, and they might avoid talking about their own feelings or problems. So for me, I have anxious attachment, and I've been noting how this might affect friendships. Now, when your attachment is triggered, there are different ways of coping with that. So like I said, with the children, when their parent left the room, they would react or respond a certain way. So in anxious attachment, that is either trying to seek closeness or pulling back in the hope that the other person will come and restore that closeness. And for the avoidant people, it would be keeping that distance, pulling away, like it said, shutting down those friendships. So what I noticed is that I was triggered by an event that happened, and I started to realize that I was worrying about my friendships. I was worrying that my friendships would break down. I was worrying that maybe they didn't like me as much as I thought they did or I hoped they did. I was worrying that new friends might think that I was weird. I was reading into things. I was starting to feel a bit needy in terms of fostering new friendships. And I realized at one point, hang on, this is me putting in too much thought and effort because I don't feel secure. The key with these attachment styles, with all relationships, with making them feel healthy and stable, is to get to that feeling of feeling secure. When the attachment is triggered, there will be that immediate response of seeking closeness and reassurance or pulling away or shutting down. And when that reaction is felt or noticed, you can choose a different way to respond, a different way to act. So for me, what I've learnt in relationships is if I'm feeling triggered, seek that reassurance and do it in a mature way. Make sure I have friends and relationships that are happy to provide that reassurance. And it's not done in a needy way. It's done in a way that I'm taking responsibility for my feelings. I can name up what I'm feeling. I can name up what happened and what makes me feel triggered. And I can check in and say, hey, I'm having this thought and I feel like this thought is perhaps not reasonable and I would like your reassurance. Can you let me know why you did this thing or why this happened or your perspective, or just give me the reassurance about it so I can have that evidence for my brain and say, look, brain, we can settle down, we can move on, we can get back to this feeling of security. Sometimes there's a feeling of wanting to pull back and hope that other people will come to you in anxious attachment. And it's like this sad, needy feeling. It feels like sulking. It feels like feeling sorry for yourself. It feels like withdrawing and hoping that the other person will notice. So kind of emphasizing these emotions and feeling like if you feel these really big emotions, if they cared about you enough, they would notice and come and fix it. But that's not how life works. Sure, if someone sees that you're visibly upset, hopefully they would comfort you. But if what you are seeking is reassurance, the best way to manage that, the best way to deal with that is to go and seek that reassurance. And in that state, it can feel like there's this big wall and you just don't want to push through it. So there can be a time of processing those emotions and letting that wall come down a little bit. And then it takes a level of maturity and self-awareness to take a step. Do the uncomfortable thing, do what your brain doesn't want you to do, and seek that reassurance. For avoidant people, I'm not avoidant, so I don't have that experience, but I feel like if you have the inclination to close down and close off from someone, the opposite of that would be to try and stay open and vulnerable and keep that connection and discuss things. And as with many things in life, having clear, open communication is often the best way to go. The other thing that is super helpful and super necessary, and it's a part of emotional processing and emotional maturity, is to notice the thought that you're telling yourself. Question whether it's true or not. What is the evidence for it? And don't wallow and give yourself evidence just for the negative, but actually ask yourself, is this objectively true? Is it possible that there's an alternative reality, an alternative way to look at things here? Is it possible that I'm wrong? Is it possible that, no, my friend doesn't think this of me and that's why they're not responding, but maybe they are busy cooking dinner for their children or whatever it might be. And then choose which thought feels better. Not only what feels realistic to you through this emotional lens, but which is a better thought to believe in, which will keep you going in the meantime until you can find out what actually happened. Rather than catastrophizing, can you just take a breath, step back and say, well, look, maybe this isn't objectively true. Maybe this isn't such a big deal, and try and just talk yourself down from those big anxious feelings and catastrophizing. So with myself, with friendships and having a bit of worry, I could note where these feelings were coming from, what had happened that made me feel insecure, the different thoughts that were stemming from that, like, well, what if these other friends feel this certain way? What if future friendships break down? There's a quote that it got better before, it can get better again. And I was looking at that quote and thinking, well, that just means it'll get worse again and then it'll get better again, sure. But that means that these things come in cycles. And I started worrying, well, what if I lose friends one day? And just thinking about how people come and go throughout our life. But the alternate way of looking at that is to be really grateful for what I currently have and who is currently in my life, and to foster the friendships that I have, and to trust the friendships and the security within them, and to work on them and be kind and make sure we have time together and be generous and arrange ways to foster these friendships and to meet new people and to be kind. And so that was a really proactive, positive way of looking at things, to go out and meet new friends and foster the friendships that I already have, and to choose to have that trust that these are good people who feel the same way about me as I feel about them, and that it is a genuine friendship, and to pick and choose the people I have in my life and make sure that they are good people and good friends. So that was a really interesting experience to have. Let's see what my notes say here. I said noticing anxiety and attachment to outcome, right? So I was noticing that I was feeling quite anxious and worrying about outcomes of interactions with people and things like that. And then I've got here telling myself it doesn't matter what they think and I actually don't care, and letting it go. That sounds like an extreme statement, but letting go of what other people think rather than worrying, well, do these people want to be my friends? Or maybe one day we'll drift apart. Just letting go of that attachment to the outcome or to what might happen one day, and just letting that go. And I've written here about the let them theory from Mel Robbins, and how that's letting people have their feelings, letting them have their beliefs, and asking, well, so what? So what if one day we drift apart? So what if people think something of me? So what if someone decides they don't want to be my friend? So what if someone thinks I'm weird? That's their business. It's not my business what other people think. And if they feel that way, let them feel that way. Let friendships move on if their time has come. But the opposite of that is let me. What is within my control? Well, within my control is to decide who I spend time with. So I can let people have their thoughts, and if they express behaviors or affect me in a certain way, well, then I won't be around those people, and choose who I want to have in my life, and choose to foster friendships and give them the best chance that they can have. But if we ever get to that point where things move on naturally, that just happens. Like, think back to your primary school friends. You're not going to be friends with everyone that you were friends with back then. And the flip side of looking at it is, instead of thinking, oh, I've lost so many people who I was close friends with at some point, the flip side of that is, wow, I keep making new friends. And there are so many good people out there. And that's what I've learned as an adult, especially having kids and being in the homeschool community and connecting with more and more people, is that every year I meet new people and make new friends. And it might not be heaps. I'm not a super social person, but there are people I know now who I didn't know 2 years ago. And they might be quite significant people in my life or less significant, but they're good people. And I've learned that there are so many good people out there in the world, and so many potential friends. So that's a beautiful way to look at it as well, that there will always be potential friends around, and there will always be good people in my life, or people that I can meet and add into my life. And the last thing I wrote is, what do I need to feel secure? So what I decided that I needed was to change my mindset a little bit, to focus on the friendships that I have, to trust in them, and to foster them. And I planned some activities and events that would help foster them. And then, what is my underlying need and desire when there is an anxious feeling, when there is a worry? What do you actually need? What would help you feel better and secure? So it's that mix between that mental attitude, the things you tell yourself, also taking a breath and calming your physical nervous system, and then also what can you do in your environment and relationships to practically foster that. All right, I better move on. That was a long discussion. It was going to be quite short, but then I thought I better actually explain attachment styles in case you didn't know too much about them. So let's move on to wins and workarounds. My win and workaround, or my win for this week, was that mindset shift, that letting go of the outcome, having flexible thinking, and deciding, well, maybe it's meant to be. Maybe this is opening me up for something else. So something that happened changed our routine, and it was a bit sad because we changed something that we'd been doing for a long time, like 8 years, a particular meetup group that we were going to. But having that attitude of trying to look at it a different way, and I am quite determined and will persevere in things. So I took this as an opportunity to reflect and think about, well, we've been doing this thing for 8 years. What's good about it? What's less good about it? How can we tweak and change it? And what ended up happening is we have changed into something slightly different in a way that has freed up more time within the week. So instead of doing this weekly thing, we are now doing it fortnightly, and we shifted the days. So I've freed up a whole extra day per week, and it's created a different flow in my calendar. And there's a part of me that really wanted to hold on to this weekly thing because I enjoy it. It's something that I've been doing for a long time. I like having that touchstone. However, I have been saying for months that I feel like I've been doing too much. There's nothing that I want to give up from our calendar. I really want to keep doing all the things. I don't like missing out. And this forced me to rework things and do it a different way. So we can look at how maybe something was meant to happen. Like I just said, I wanted to free up time in my calendar, but I was refusing to do it. How a change can open up for something else. And to look in hindsight, well, what are the benefits of this thing. Good and bad are both two sides of the one coin. So having this thing on weekly meant that I had less time, and there's benefits to that and there's downsides to that. And so I decided to trust that this shift was for the benefit, for the good side, for trying something new. And that is letting go of the outcome and having that flexible thinking. We've got to take the good with the bad, and we've got to look at, well, what are the good sides of this? What I've written here is that when is life ever 100% perfect? Like, we want to have all the good sides of something without any of the downsides. That's not how it works. And what we could do is we can have gratitude. For starters, Oprah has said that every night she would say 3 things that she was grateful for, and that changed her life, that changed her attitude, that changed her outlook. When we look back over things, we can see them clearly, we can look for that gratitude, we can have what I call preemptive nostalgia, and that's looking back. And my favorite quote is, "These are the good old days." So this preemptive nostalgia is putting ourselves in the mindset of the future, looking back onto now, and how we will see all the good things that happen, and we will miss certain things, and the negative things, the bad things, will just be funny stories or little blips or struggles that we overcame, but there were good things happening at the same time. Like, maybe you have a time you look back on in your life, and at the time you were really struggling, but you look at it positively. Like, I remember when my kids were toddlers, I found so many things difficult, but if I look back now, I did really enjoy so much of it. At the time, people were saying, look, it goes by so fast, try and appreciate it. And that's really hard to hear when you're struggling, and to try and force yourself to appreciate things more in the moment can be quite difficult. But through that fog of struggle and sleep deprivation, there were still parts that I enjoyed and parts that I was grateful for. And then now looking back on that, it's like a balanced view. I know that I was struggling, but the good parts are the good memories. And so what you can do is look back on life now in that way. And what are the things that you're going to miss? And how will you maybe look back on the struggles as these small quirky blips in your life? Like, maybe getting kids to sleep was such a struggle, but when it's the future, when your kids have grown up, you might look back on that somewhat fondly. People reckon you'll look back fondly on things like that. I'm not so sure because I'm still in it, but there will be positives of that as well. Like, I still cuddle my daughter to sleep, and part of me finds that a struggle because of the time commitment and the fact that it's has to happen, but I'm getting to a point where I'm clinging onto it because I know that it will pass. This too shall pass. All the good and all the bad will pass. So try and use that and getting that mindset of being grateful for the good thing, letting go of the less good things, and realizing that life is just always going to be a mix. So if you can learn to hold on to the good and lean into the good, it'll make your life better, not just now, but forever. And like I said, my win for this week was having this more flexible thinking and letting go of the outcome and deciding to see the good with the bad and take it as it comes and trust that this is what is meant to be for now. So what is the good parts of that? What are the benefits? What are the positive shifts that are going to happen? All right, in Life Lounge, this is where we reflect, refine, shift, and check in with the different zones of life. So in Life Lounge, I've been creating time for me. When I had really little kids, it was about harnessing the time that I had. So when they were reading, I'd be reading. I would bring them into my interests like art. So I would have time to sit down and do art because they would be sitting down to do art. And I would just make things that I was interested in as kid-friendly as possible so that I could still do my interests, but probably not to the same level, some things. Like, I did take them to some live music, but that's dependent on what kids can go to. And we would bring earmuffs for them and not stay quite as long, but it would still mean that I was doing these hobbies, doing these things that bring little joys to my life. Now that they're a bit older, I can go without them. Finally, that's only been the last year or two that I've had other people that look after them, and they've been ready for that level of independence, and they haven't been quite so attached and high needs. And so this has been allowing them to grow their independence and for me to harness my freedom. This is something that will happen no matter where you're at with your children, if you've got young kids, this will happen. And I remember being in the trenches and feeling like it would never end, but it does. They will always grow up. They will always get to a point. You will always get to a point where you have your freedom back. And it's about creating the freedom where you can. So like I said, I did that in certain ways when they were younger. And still, like if I'm at home with them, I have to notice and create moments for me. So instead of standing around scrolling on my phone, I can sit down with a cup of tea and I can read a book. I can make some space for myself and tell them, look, this time is for me. Here's an activity for you to do. And I will help you afterwards. If they come and they request something and it's not urgent, I will help them afterwards and they can wait. The other thing I can do is get them to bed on time. That's what I'm working on at the moment, to free up some space in the evenings and just really protecting the times that I have for me. As a homeschooling mom who has them all the time, this is really important. So like I said, find some times when they are around and rest together. Find little pockets for cups of tea and reading. Find bigger pockets like doing activities together. And then beyond that, I'm creating space to work and expecting them to be able to have some independent time. And then even beyond that is the greatest form of freedom is to go out and have some kid-free time. So there's all different ways to get that same feeling and to prioritize yourself and create time and freedom for yourself. Look after that need to nourish yourself and your interests in various ways. In Joy Break this week, I haven't had any mini breaks. I've talked to you before about watching dance videos or having little snippets of things here and there. I said that I've gotten into a book that I've been reading and I'm still trying to do that, but it's reached a bit of a lull. So I have to push through that lull and hopefully enjoy the second half of the book. But the thing that is bringing me joy at the moment, the days have been kind of busy and like I said, haven't had these mini joy breaks. But at the end of the day, some evening, we're watching the US version of Ghosts together as a family, which is quite funny, and we can talk about historical things, and there's a Viking in there and a Native American and a hippie and a scout leader, and it creates points of discussion, it creates shared jokes. I won't give any spoilers, but it can be quite entertaining for everyone in the family. So that's a nice rest for after dinner, when we've had a really busy day, to just sit down for half an hour and have that little treat together. So that's what's been bringing me joy at the moment. And as for letting go and letting in, I'm letting go of that sneaky anxiety. Like I said, I didn't quite notice until it reached a certain point that I was feeling anxiety over friendships, which is new for me, and it came from a particular trigger. And I think I spoke the other week as well about lying in bed, having anxiety in the morning because I haven't quite realized that I'm awake and thinking and just lying there with various thoughts. So noticing that and shifting what I'm doing, moving my body, finding a focus, finding something to engage my brain in. And what I'm letting in is trusting in the now, focusing on the good and looking for positive outcomes for whatever is happening in life, which I think I'm getting quite good at because I've been through quite a few things in this life, and I've been on this personal growth journey for the last 18 years, reflecting on myself and my life and psychology and sociology and all the various things, and bringing in somewhat of a stoic attitude and a positive attitude to things. So that's what I'm letting in. Trust, focusing on the good, and looking for positive outcomes. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast episode, and I will see you next week. Be sure to check out my blog, which is now online, which is super exciting. And if you're listening to my podcast anywhere, and you want to check out the blog as well, my podcast episodes are being uploaded to Substack. So if you'd prefer to have them all in one place with the blog and the podcast, you can find me there at Marley Darling. Sorry for that noise. I'm opening my window. I should have waited until the end of the episode. Jump on over to my blog, hit subscribe, and you will stay updated with everything that's happening there, because I talk about things in a more concise way, and it's a bit more linear and less rambly as this podcast episode is. So thanks for listening again, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye. So you've got neurodiverse kids in your life. You've probably noticed that they don't respond well to traditional parenting techniques or discipline or ways to get them motivated or to comply. Maybe you're tearing your hair out with stress and the same old struggles and fights and arguments every single day. Or perhaps you're feeling completely lost because you've tried absolutely everything and it just doesn't seem to work. These kids do not respond to behavior charts. They don't respond to power being asserted over them. What these kids need is something completely different. And what I'm going to suggest to you is you actually stop trying to change them. If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. And you cannot change these children. You cannot control their behavior. But if you change something around them, you change their environment, you change how you act, it will change how they react. It will change how they respond. If you change something, then no longer will you be stuck in this cycle of doing what you've always done and getting what you've always got. And those traditional methods do not work. So stop wasting your time and energy on them. I know you're looking for a solution and you feel like it's just not possible anymore, but let me tell you, I was in the exact same boat, and then I realized what we need is to do something radically different. My approach is to change the environment around them and to change how you interact with them, and that will have the biggest impact. It'll stop you feeling like your head is butting up against a wall, and it will start actually creating change with less effort. I believe in small, easy to implement shifts that create big change. So if you're interested in seeing what I have to offer, head over to marleydarling.com, and I've got a free webinar there for you to check out, and then comprehensive programs that cover everything I've learned in over a decade of parenting neurodiverse kids, and also in being a neurodiverse person myself who's been studying neurodiversity for over 17 years. I'm here to help you. I'm here to give a different approach, and I wholeheartedly believe that we need a radically different approach to support these children, to empower them to live the best lives possible, and to give you a bit of a break as the parent. So head on over to marleydarling.com, where you can find some free resources and maybe check out my comprehensive programs if you're ready to see a massive difference in your life through just some small shifts. See you there.